According to the recent polls, 74% of Russians support war against Ukraine, support territorial aggression against their neighbor, bombing and shelling of peaceful cities, deaths of not only Ukrainian soldiers but also the civilians, and all the horrible war crimes of Russian soldiers. Support not only these but also the deaths of these Russian soldiers themselves, which is another result of the special military operation. Support regardless of the sanctions and their own scrutiny, even further radicalization and relentless restrictiveness of the ruling regime in Russia and isolation of Russia from the entire world. It is the most logical to ask ourselves, how is that possible for any person to support aggressive war and usurpation of power and all the related horrors, not in some medieval times, but in the 21st century. My name is Oleg Stoyev. I'm Ukrainian lawyer, analyst, World Debate Championship EFL finalist and humanitarian working since 2017 to protect victims of Russian aggression against Ukraine. The purpose of this channel is to expose core social, cultural and political things behind the Russian war against Ukraine, especially about those which are most likely to be unclear or misleading from the outside. In the previous episodes, we have seen how Rashism takes its roots in the ordinary Russian people and Russian Orthodox Church. Today, let's have a look on roots of Rashism in Russian culture and answer the question, is culture actually separate from the politics in Russian Empire? Instead of giving you some theory, let me tell you two stories. The first one we shall call a story of two husbands. Imagine there is this astonishing artist. She is a singer.
Він має стати для неї останнім, хоча 10 років тому вона вже попрощалася зі сценою. Тоді співачка дала 37 концертів у 13 країнах і заявляла, цей тур останній.
Recognized by all the state, a person and personality above the regime, about the state, above the time, above everything. So this artist, a lady, she has two husbands. The first one, now ex-husband, he is also an artist and he is a big supporter of the regime. Whatever the regime, the administration does, artist supports that. If this is a war against Georgia, if this is a war against Ukraine, if this is occupation of Crimea, the first husband always supports what the regime does. It might be a coincidence, but what this first husband gets is the title of the honorary singer and honorary artist of Russian Federation. He is also highly paid and enjoys advertisement on the national TV and state-owned TV channels. Apart of that, he also gets all the kind of awards and honorary titles. All in all, the first husband lives quite well. So let's have a look on how the second husband is doing. The second husband also happened to be an actor and he is very popular himself. But when 2014 came, he actually did not support the occupation of Crimea. He remained silent. In 2022, with the full-scale invasion to Ukraine, however, he changed his behavior, his line, his position. He spoke up. He spoke up saying that the war is void, the war is wrong.
Я не могу не задать пару естественных, мне кажется, для каждого человека вопросов. Вот вчера, в канун светлого праздника Пасхи, в день схождения благодатного огня, летят крылатые российские ракеты в жилой дом в Одессе. Погибает семья, погибает трехмесячный ребенок. Как это все бьется? Вот как это? Объясните мне. Ну, начнем с того, что крылатые ракеты не должны прилетать в жилые дома и в будние дни, а не только в праздники. Но вы одновременно молитесь с патриархом Иерусалимским о мире, вы официальные лица, вы приезжаете, вы везете благодатный огонь в Москву, и при этом эта же власть посылает эти ракеты.
That the special military operation is nothing but a crime against the people of Ukraine, that the war is unprovoked and that it must be stopped. What do you think happened with the second husband? Well, likely enough, he left the country before starting to speak up. However, it does not help from all the perspectives. You can still lose your property, and you do lose your property. Also, it is absolutely clear that as long as the regime is in power, and it hasn't changed since the 90s, there is no way back for you as long as you want to live your life and do not lose your health. The public informational field, which used to support you and praise you for your talent, now mocks you. Not only it mocks you, but it also mocks your wife, which is not even supporting you, but which remains silent. What it tells to the second husband is that you're a traitor, an enemy of the state. You should be deprived of all of your existing awards and titles and privileges. All your properties should be taken away from you, and you are never to be allowed to the state again. Other actors who used to be a friend of yours, who used to appreciate your craft and what you do, now they either do not speak about you, so they are not near you and they will not suffer as your friend, or they are even telling that you are an enemy of the nation and calling the state to take necessary action in order to put you to the proper place. Unfortunately, there are many more stories like those. If you are pro-regime, you will get what you need if you do what is necessary to be done. Let's, for example, take a case of Russian singer Checheriina. Before her involvement to the war, absolutely no one knew her. She was not at any level of prominence and she was not in the media. However, after her active involvement to the war, after support of the actions of Russian regime, and after her travels to so-called Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic, what happened to her is that she's been awarded with a number of state awards and also the title of the prominent actor of Russian culture.
Посоветую укропам, сдавайтесь, все ваши грехи вымерзнут в наших гулагах, и вы вернетесь чистенькими в наш русский мир, который переплавит все. А всем верным скажу, время настоящей свободы, о которой мы все мечтали, пришло. Сейчас самое время выбирать, кем мы хотим стать. Бессмертными героями или бесславными предателями. Каждый должен встать на своем посту, на своем фронте, на защиту нашей Родины. Всех братьев по оружию поздравляю с наступающим 2023 годом. Ура!
Another prominent example is a Russian singer with the name Shaman, who was absolutely no one before the war. With the start of the special military operation, however, what he did is that he became very active supporter of the regime and of the actors of the Russian government. So, by some coincidence, probably, Shaman got the highest level of support from the national media. He is now everywhere, especially if there is any state-arranged concert, you will see Shaman there. And Shaman got the message very clearly, making one of these recent hits, "Я русский," or "I am Russian." it's also not only about the singers. Let's take, for example, Zakhar Prilepin. For the year of 2022, Zakhar Prilepin has been named one of the most prominent writers in Russia in the entire history. However, if you will just Google Mr. Prilepin, what you will find is a number of his political statements. And you know the spirit of these statements. Putin does only the necessary things. The war has a character of the holy war. Ukrainians and Russians are the same people, and of course it is NATO who is responsible for all the tragedy of what's going on.
Захар, вы убивали людей?
Да, безусловно. Я, как человек, бывший на 3 войнах, конечно, я убивал людей. Да,
Что вы при этом чувствовали?
Ну, ничего я при этом не чувствую. Это такая работа, как и любая другая деятельность. Кто-то их лечит, кто-то друг друга стреляет.
Кто-то их убивает. Кто-то их лечит, кто-то их убивает.
Конечно. Да, Ксения, вы живете на белом свете, потому что кто-то убивал людей, чтобы вы родились на белый свет.
Нет,
в этом нет вообще... Нет, не поэтому вы живете.
Нет, я не поэтому.
А почему вы живете? Потому что кто-то сдавался вам во время...
There is also another example of Boris Korchevnikov, a very kind gentleman who used to be just a minor actor in one of the series, but because of his proactive speaking in favor of the regime, he has first of all got the position of editor in one of the most prominent series on the state TV channel, and after that he is now an editor-in-chief on the Russian religious channel Spas.
Способ испытания веры. Пойди и вырежи, уничтожь народ.
Многие либералы сейчас скажут, нет, даже правитель не имеет права лишать жизни и так далее. Нас к этому долго приучали. Но Священное Писание говорит совершенно об обратном. Начальники народные при поясе носят меч, дабы свидетельствовать тем самым, что им дана власть соблюдать закон божественный. То есть они имеют право на то, чтобы карать, пресекать земные судьбы и давать возможность человеку осознать даже через такое страшное событие, как лишение жизни. Народ, президент, Бог.
The examples are too numerous to name all of them. There is a case of Dmitry Pevtsov, of Sergei Bezrukov, all of them now members of the party United Russia, the Putin's party. The moral is very simple. You do the right things, and the right things will happen to you. Support the regime, and you will have all the benefits, the money, the support from the authorities, the time of the national channel, and support of the people. And, probably not as less important, you will not get the bad stuff. Because the bad stuff does happen. And the stories about that are probably as numerous as the stories about success when you support the regime. As the first example of what will happen to you if you are not doing the right thing, let's take the Russian music band Машина времени or Machine of Time. So what they committed is absolutely horrible disgrace, act of protest. At one of the concerts, the leader of the band addressed the audience saying that kissing the ass of the war chief and being a patriot of Russia is not the same thing.
Родина, друзья, это не жопа президента, которую надо все время мусолить, целовать. Родина – это бабушка, нищая на вокзале, продающая картошку.
Obviously, such a horrible crime could not went unnoticed, and the whole activity of the Machine of Time band in Russia has been de facto banned. Whenever they are trying to make concert, they always get refused. They cannot do that. That is practically impossible. Another example is Dmitry Nazarov, who has spoke up against the war, who has called it a crime and called for the war to be stopped.
Кругом выстроены стены, занавесы железные. И это вот мы все, мы оказались внутри этого двора-колодца, мы россияне. и мы не можем найти выход.
So what happened with Dmitry Nazarov is that, first of all, he got a huge wave of hatred in the social media and especially through the state-owned media. That is, however, only start of the story. What happened later is that he got himself kicked from the theater where he has been working for decades and decades. Of course, not with the formal reason for the support of the war, but just without any reason. But it does not even take what Dmitry Nazarov or Artur Smolyaninov did to get in the blacklist. If you are speaking about the facts of atrocities, you are to be cancelled. If you are saying that the Bucha tragedy is the business of Russian army and the result of the atrocities of the Russian soldiers, you will get in the prison. If you are saying that Russian army commits crimes, you will get a sentence for discreditation of the special military operation. Quite recently, until the very latest months, if you would call a so-called special military operation, what is it? A war, you would also get some proceedings, either criminal or administrative, for the discreditation of the Russian army. In modern Russia, there is even the new term for this enemy of the nations, as they used to be called in Stalin times. Now they are called the foreign agent. If you are given a title of the foreign agent, you will have to keep it whatever you do and wherever you appear. If you are running a concert, you will have to put an announcement that this is a concert of the foreign agent. If you are given an interview, the conductor of the interview should also make the disclaimer. And yes, in each of your social media posts, even if you are posting a picture of wonderful facility or a building or just a painting, you still have to keep the warning that this content is brought to you by the cruel foreign agent. Recently, all the private information of the people who are recognized to be foreign agents, such as the place of residence, the phone number, and other extremely sensitive information, has been published, and not just on some forum of the radicalized supporters of Putin regime, but on the very website of Russian Ministry of Justice. Because for Russians, this is justice. So what will happen to you if you are recognized as the foreign agent is that you will be taken out of the place completely. If you are a writer, for example, your books will be banned from the sales offices. If you are a musician, your music will be removed from the TV channels. Obviously, if you have some TV channel on any media available in your country, it will be either closed or you will be taken away from there. What will also happen to you is that administrative and even criminal proceedings will be launched against you, and if there are no legitimate grounds to do that, well, they will be invented. That is what happened with the Russian rapper Oxymoron, who has announced that he supports Ukraine and he believes that the war is void. So what happened to him is that the investigative committee, the Russian prosecutor office, found an act of extremism in the wording, in the lyrics of Oxymoron's song. And if you think that this is some recent song, then no. It has been written like 5 or 10 years ago, and all of these 5 or 10 years, everything was fine with him. Now, that is an extremism. So, in the end of the day, if you are any kind of the publicity in Russia, please remember this very simple moral. If you are doing the right things will happen to you. And if you are the wrong person, well, expect all the wrong things to happen to you as well. With that in mind, make the right choice. Now, what narratives do you sell through these public actors, and why does it actually work? Let's start with the latter one. This is really simple. The very definition of the influencer means that this person does influence. And this is very logical and obvious because there is argument from authority. This is the famous guy, this is very respectable lady, she or he is celebrated in the society. And this propaganda does not have to be too logical or sophisticated. To testify that, let's have a look on the recent interview of TV spokesperson Кучера.
Ты поддерживаешь армию России, которая принимает участие в этой войне, и ты поддерживаешь Владимира Путина, или ты не поддерживаешь Владимира Путина?
Владимира Путина поддерживаю в чем?
В той политике, которую он ведет в 2022 году.
Я сейчас, скажу тебе честно, пытаюсь хоть как-то понять вообще, что происходит. Мне трудно поддерживать или не поддерживать человека, когда я не понимаю логики его действий. Понимаешь? Я знаю одно, что я поддерживаю свою страну и пацанов, которые отдают свои жизни.
Так, еще раз, Оскар, ты снова в сторону ушел. То есть ты не поддерживаешь Путина сейчас?
Слушай, если Путин сейчас на стороне России, то я поддерживаю Путина.
Путин на стороне России?
Сейчас у меня ощущение, что да. И чем дальше это идет, тем больше я это вижу.
То есть ты поддерживаешь Путина?
Да, сейчас да.
So this is how it works. Somehow you associate with the guy because of his or her background or image. This person makes your heart beat faster. You trust to this person because it is considered to be a very moral one. Because how would you not, with all of these wonderful films from your childhood and all of these good stories?
Зачем же ты, бродяга, смущал народ, рассказывая на базаре об истине, о которой ты представления не имеешь? Что такое истина?
Истина прежде всего в том, что у тебя болит голова. И болит так сильно, что ты малодушно помышляешь о смерти. Ты не только не в силах говорить со мной, но тебе трудно даже глядеть на меня. И сейчас я невольно являюсь твоим палачом, что меня огорчает.
Now, if you're living in Russia, what narratives are they selling to you? The pure, distilled example of this propaganda is the open letter in support of Russia's invasion to Ukraine, signed on the 4th of March 2022 by over 150 Russian public actors. Magnificent in how disgusting, hypocritical and low in its worshipping of Putin and his regime it is, this open letter actually constitutes some monument. If you have enough patience, you should read that, but if you don't, here are some excerpts from it. First of all post-Soviet Union is an undividable Holy Rus state entity. Maintaining its integrity is the greatest good that ever exists. Second, evil West has been trying to divide the Holy Rus throughout the history via the hands of Napoleon, Triple Entente, Hitler, and now does that through the collective West. Third, all the bloody wars run by Russia after the 1991 in Georgia, Moldova, Ukraine, Transnistria, Chechnya and other places is a result of the conspiracy of the cruel West who destroyed the Soviet Union. Also, in Ukraine, Nazis and fascists, I'm actually surprised that they did not mention Satanists, cultists and necromancers, they have been killing the people of Ukraine, and Russia must come to save them. And of course, Russian proxies in Donetsk and Luhansk regions occupied since 2014 are actually innocent Ukrainian people who denied the global evil coming from the West, and that is no exaggeration, this is a quote. Finally, Ukraine does not exist as a separate entity, It is a part of Russia, and it must remain as a part of Russia for the future. Of course, Russian citizens who oppose the war are the same filth as those Soviet citizens who were ready to support and live under the rule of Hitler. If not for the Russian invasion to Ukraine, the cruel global West would attack Russia first and destroy it. The most disgusting, the letter ends with the statements that the invasion is run in the name of unity and love, with the assurance that the God supports Russia. These are narratives related to the recent invasion, but let's outline some narratives of Rashism in the broader terms. First, isolationism. Well, Russia is surrounded with the enemies from all the sides. These cruel enemies want to take over all the Russian resources, land and manpower. Like that is not enough, this collective West, this evil, this enemy, wants to corrupt the holy spirit of great Russian people in the way of Sodom and Gomorrah. And of course, Russia is very special, unlike the entire world. There is no other space like Russia, and all the things which work in the rest of the world, they will never work in Russia.
Умом Россию не понять, аршином общим не измерить, у ней особенная стать. В Россию можно только верить.
Now, why would you need such a narrative of isolationism? Very simple. Isolationism gives you control. Control through fear. Because as long as there is a horrible enemy on the outside, what you have on the inside does not actually matter. As long as the internal Tsar or internal Putin protects you from the evil enemy from the outside.
Скрипит Америка зубами, но им убогим не понять, что никогда Владимир Путин не посрамит Россию мать.
The second narrative that Russian culture gives you is the backing up for the absolutism. Whoever your leader is, this is the utmost, the ultimate leader. You want to support that. He is the best guy, he is the most moral guy, he is the wisest geopolitical leader. You want to support him. He is exceptional. Whether this is the Soviet rule, or this is a Tsarism, or this is the Putin's Russia. If there will be no Putin, there will be no Russia. Finally, there is this absolutely racist combination of the sentiment for greatness and the corresponding moral duty to conquer. This is something that you might be familiar from the times of the Nazism and fascism. From one side, it builds the understanding among the Russian citizens that they are special. Not only most kind-hearted, generous, open souls, but also, and most importantly, they are specially favored by God. The God who has obviously selected the Russians among all the other nations to enforce his will on earth. As a result, of course, Russian people are entitled to enforce their will on others, regardless of whether the other people want that or not, even if it comes at a greater cost, because there is always a greater good of the God-given mission. Such state is characteristic not only for the Russian culture of nowadays, but through Russian culture throughout the history. Probably the best mix and the quintessentia of the Rashism philosophy is outlined in one of the most well-known poems of Mikhail Lermontov. Speaking to the people of Caucasus, which have been attacked and imperialized by the Russian Empire, Mikhail Lermontov has written the following lines. Take it, Cherkess, and accept it. Maybe today you are resistant, but tomorrow perhaps the entire East and the West would be under the control of the same great Russian master. And you will talk to them and you will say proudly, maybe I am a slave, but I am the slave of the greatest master. This is exactly what Rashism stands for. You are a slave and you are proud of that. You encourage the imperialism, you encourage the totalitarian power of your master, and you are absolutely satisfied with that. So this is it. Usually in the end of the video it goes the summary of this episode or entry for the next one, advertisement for the support of the channel. It is painful to sacrifice it, but this time we have something very special to show you. Too special to have any other ending for the roots of Rashism in Russian culture but this. Please welcome Timati. All rights reserved.
Мой лучший друг — это президент Путин. Мой лучший друг — это президент Путин. Мой лучший друг — это президент Путин. Мой лучший друг — это президент Путин.
Работаем без перерыва от понедельника и до субботы. Скажи, кто твой лучший друг, и я сразу скажу,
ты
кто
знаешь
ты.
про любовь к тебе одной. Мы с вами за него всей страной. Вы знали, он крутой супергерой. Сегодня я игрок, мой друг со мной.
Мой лучший друг — это президент Путин. 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 Мой лучший друг — это президент Путин.
Идем плавно, он главный, значит будет все по плану. Ты знаешь, кто твой флагман.
Ты знаешь, кто твой флагман.
Мистер Президент, с нами наравне. Те, кто в зале здесь все.